I'll share. Okay, perfect. Hi. Hi,
Hey,
Joe. Sorry, we're live.
nice to
Obviously.
meet you.
Oh yeah. Okay, perfect. Let's start with, I guess, like, to start the show, I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So,
Yeah,
um, you are assuming from England, and then you were originally a founder, and you have worked in investment banking, and you were a founder again, and now you're a partner at Entrepreneur First. Maybe we
mhm.
could start with like, what were some core lessons that you've learned early on in your career that kind of shape you into who you are today?
Yeah. It's sort of been a long and windy journey, but I guess the common theme is that from an early age and from when I sort of first started out, I've always been building things. I spent my teenage years and lots of my time at school and then at college, not really going to classes, but like building stuff on the side, making online games, trying to make some money. And, I had some fairly interesting success with that early on. And then I think what's really interesting and is something that also ends up being what I deal with a lot today in my job is, I went to college and all the people around me started to become investment bankers. They started to become consultants. They started to get great job offers. And, the people around you really kind of dictate the things that you want in life as well. And so, I started competing on the wrong things. And I very briefly went into finance, became an investment banker. Luckily, I met the founders of EF, where I now work, and they said, don't do that, come and build a company. And so I did that. But I think that like some of the early lessons I learned from that were really, you really can do it. The company I built at EF at the time, and when I just graduated from college, didn't turn out to be my billion-dollar company. But some of the other people alongside me on that program who were just like me, who had just graduated, who were just starting their journeys, built companies that, became huge exits, became world-changing companies. And I think that, the lessons I learned early on is that you can be ambitious, you can seek to do something huge, and you can be really successful starting out just straight away in your career. You don't need to wait. And I think that's something that, I spend all my day working with founders to help them realize at the moment. And I think it's something that I was really lucky that EF and the community around me that I found there when I graduated, when I started my journey, taught me.
I love that. I want to double click on, like, so honestly, like, I feel like some of the most interesting part is like at EF, you were originally at EIR, and you have launched their Asia program, and now you're in SF. Let's talk about like the journey of like being at EF. Like, how do you kind of like see the program shift, and like maybe we could give the audience a little bit of background of Entrepreneur First. So
Yeah,
I actually am an angel investor in a company that went through Entrepreneur First.
great. Which one?
Vantager.
Okay, yeah. One of my investments. Mason
Oh, wow.
and Nico
Yes.
were on our first program in New York that we ran in the US, and
Um,
yeah, they're great.
Mason,
They're great. Yeah.
Mason was a listener from our show, so he was commenting on one of the LP
Oh,
episodes, and I was like, "Wow, this guy seems like really, really smart."
yeah.
And then the rest is history. But yeah, it's such an interesting thing. I feel like Entrepreneur First is like being famous for like the YC of Europe, but maybe we could
Mm,
start with like, what it is. And then for the audience who may not be super familiar with, let's start with like the backstory of how you guys kind of created the program.
yeah, sure. So you can think of Entrepreneurs First as
Mhm.
the earliest investor you could possibly imagine. We really, I think a lot of investors say they invest in people. We genuinely do. And what I mean by that is our first check and our first commitment is not into a team. It's not into a company. It's not into an idea. It's not into anything that is at all fully fledged. It's into a person. So we go out looking for people as our unit of investment. And we go out looking for people that we believe could become future really, really exciting founders. They're early in their journey, usually within a few years of graduating. But we believe that they could go on that journey to be really exciting. And so when we find those people, we invest in them as an individual, and we help build their future. We help turn them into a co-founding team by running them through a program with other people like them who they can co-found with. And we help them work out what they should be working on, what's the most ambitious thing that they could tackle. And then by the end of that process, they're hopefully in a team working on a highly ambitious idea, and pitch at our demo day and unveil themselves to the world, raise lots of funding, and build world-changing outcomes. So that's what we do. We started in Europe, and we've built a portfolio of hundreds of companies there. But we now have an office in San Francisco where all of our companies globally come to, where they meet investors, and where the vast majority of our companies now base themselves.
For sure. I love that. Also, quick shout out to Chris and Tori. I want to start with like, so like when you guys, I guess like when you guys filtering the founders, what does their application kind of look like for the people who actually step into the program? And maybe we could talk about like for each badge, like how many people were there and how frequently the badges are.
Yeah, yeah. So what we're looking for when we get to know people is what is it about them that makes them really exceptional?
Mhm.
We work with people super early in their career. There's going to be loads of things they have to learn. We're totally okay with that, right? Like they might not have managed people. They might not have led product sprints or done all of these other things that you're probably going to have to do if you're trying to build a company and build an organization around you. But the common theme with everyone we work with is there's something about them that is just really special and really outlier compared to everyone else. And it could vary. It could be, this person's really obsessed with some particular niche area of technology. They think it's going to change the world. It could be somebody is, has just like incredibly high bias to action, just goes out there, just does stuff constantly, just gets things done. We're looking for that quality about them that is different from everyone around them. And so, all of our assessment, all of what we do, getting to know them, is all based around trying to find that thing about somebody. And then, what was the second half of your question? Sorry.
Selecting them and then
Selecting them.
also how many people per badge and how frequent.
Yeah. So it varies. In the US, we run rolling batches. So, if you're here in the US and, this speaks to you, then you can come and talk to us at any time. And we make investments on a rolling basis. We tend to work with 10 to 20 people at once here. In other locations, it runs a little bit differently. We run batches of around 50 individuals, and those tend to start every 3 months. We have a few different products and ways of doing things and starting dates. You can check on our website for details.
Amazing. So I wonder maybe we could also talk about like when you are building the US program versus like the Asia program, how did it evolve? So like when you enter a new country, like what goal do you have in mind and what resources do you have to help build out the program?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that matters most for us is talent, right? And I spent a lot of time in Asia. I used to be based in Singapore, spent time traveling running our funding programs in Hong Kong and in Bangalore as well. And I think that the primary judgment for us spending time in any location is, are there exceptional people there? And are there exceptional people there who should be founders, but might not be right now or might need help to get there, right? And so, we built hundreds of companies. We worked with really great founders in Asia, and we still do in our office in Bangalore. And our primary consideration is that talent. I think that, the thing that's changed and the thing that we're really excited about is that I think one side of the equation for us is finding great talent. The other side is realizing their potential. And I think the US is vital to realizing potential, right? I think if I go back in time, what I would have told myself when I graduated was come on a plane, get to SF, build here. I think that while talent is distributed around the world and there are amazing people in all different places that we visited as EF, their chance of realizing their potential is highest when we bring them to the Bay Area. And so that's why we spend more and more time here. That's why we have an office here. That's why we have founders from all around the world working from our office on Folsom Street.
I love that. I wonder, so since you guys on the advisory board, you guys have like the founder of Scribe, the founder of Quora, and Art Schmidt, and a bunch of like other top executives. I guess how do you guys typically work with them in terms of like on the cadence or like, how many like for the rolling badges people, do they get to meet with one of the advisors every week or like how they kind of like shape the platform basically?
Yeah, we have a pretty wide advisory network, and we're lucky that on our cap table we just have loads of great Bay Area investors who have been working with us, invest in us, worked with our companies, invest in our companies over the last decade that we've been doing this. So yeah, these are not just names on a sheet; they really get involved. We frequently won like dinners and different events. We had Reid Hoffman come and headline one of our demo days recently. He's run dinners with me in New York when we're talking to different candidates and when we're getting to know people and working out like, if they're the right fit for us to invest in. And so, the access is real. Our founders will spend time with these people and have access to these people, and also a wider network of just like day-to-day operators and people who have built companies, other founders, the wider EF alum network now that we've got a few hundred companies. But yeah, I think like the network around us is one of the biggest enabling features, right? Like that's what allows you to get into the inner circle quicker.
I love that. I wonder, so like maybe we could talk about like the theme that you're seeing and
Mhm.
globally and in SF. So in SF, obviously every company is an AI company this year, and everybody's building AI agent for literally every category. And what are you seeing in Asia versus like in the Bay Area? Like, are there any differences versus like
Mm.
Europe companies?
Yeah, interesting. I don't know if I perceive major differences. Look, I think AI is a global thing, right? Like everyone's building towards it. Having
Mhm.
said that, I do think that um, the common theme everywhere is that I think a lot of the most interesting founders that I speak to are not just jumping on trends, I just like thinking differently. I think the thing that excites me most when I speak to somebody early in their journey is when they tell me things that either aren't obvious or that I haven't heard elsewhere or that I couldn't have just guessed myself, right? And usually, that might be AI related, but it will be some deeper insight. It will be some deeper discussion. And so, yeah, I think the common theme everywhere is that's what I'm looking for, right? I think, yes, there's a mega trend. Yes, there's like so much to be built right now. But tell me something different. Tell me something interesting. Tell me something exciting. Um, so that's what I'm always looking for.
Is there something like, I guess, like when you are looking for the answers from the founders, how do you quickly suss out like if the person is speaking from like past experience versus like someone just like a really good salesperson?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'd say that once you spend time with thousands of founders, you start to get for a hang for that, right? You start to get trained to do that. I think like it's really actually quite easy. I think when you keep asking questions, when you keep going deeper, when you keep pushing on a topic, it becomes really clear very quickly. Has somebody thought deeply about something, or has somebody really spoken to customers about it, or has somebody really got to know what's going on here, or are they kind of just being surface level about this? And I think the very best people, they might not have all the answers 10 levels deep straight away. But I think what's exciting is when you speak to them again and they've gone down another layer of depth, right?
Mhm.
Like founding, getting fascinated about an area, working on something is a journey. And I work with people so early in their journey that they might not have all that depth of information first. But what I want to see is that they are hungry to gather it. I think like one of the best founders I worked with recently has a line where he kind of compares it to being a sort of like being an investigative journalist, right? You have to just be like paranoid and hungry for the truth and just like keep digging towards it. And you're not going to have that straight away, but week on week or meeting on meeting as I meet people, that's what I want to see them doing.
I think another question I have for you is like, since like I feel like Entrepreneur First is such a very early stage investor, you guys invest in like raw talent. So for a company like um who are in like a niche, so I think like the problem is like, would you invest in like niche driven company and then expecting them to kind of take over the space when they grow bigger, or like would you invest in like more towards like a generalist company and then like after 50 pivot they like made sense? And like for the, I guess for since you, like everybody invested talent, like what are some ways for you to kind of vet the idea or like the direction of the founders are going?
I think the primary thing we care about is, are these people exceptional? Is this an exceptional team? And we want exceptional teams going after potentially huge markets. But sometimes it's a journey to find that huge market. And sometimes the huge market is non-obvious, right? Like maybe it feels like something is small. I think this is where, like when you read about past investing, case studies and misses, and when you see different great VCs talking about this, like the thing that people often miss is the potential size of something that feels niche right now. And
Mhm.
so, I will always back great teams, even if the thing they're doing doesn't initially seem huge, but they think it could be. I think what we're not interested in building is lifestyle businesses. Like we want to build huge companies. We want to build companies with ambition. We want to back people who want to build like generational businesses. But great people going after something they think could be huge, and they have a good reason to believe that's what gets me excited. So yeah.
I love that. I wonder, so like, when I guess since like you guys have backed a few companies that's worth about like $13 billion like for the companies collectively. Maybe we could talk about like the company that eventually end up be backing by like a Sequoia or a Z. Like, what are some
Mm,
characters that do they share versus like the company that who went through the program but didn't really go anywhere?
mm, mm, mm. Um, do you mean in terms of like what are the mistakes they made?
Yeah, or like do they do something different? Like when you are working with them in the program,
Yeah.
like are
Oh, yeah.
perform
Yeah.
different?
I think like the very best founders, I think a common theme with the very best teams is just speed. Just like high bias to action and getting things done. I think that building a company is not a theoretical exercise. It's a exercise in getting out there and actually getting stuff done. And so I think the very best teams move really fast. And you know, I was talking earlier, I guess, about how conversations with founders change week on week. The very best founders, the conversation changes every week. Either they've learned something from their users, or they've developed their thinking on their market, or they've changed entirely what they're doing. But I think the common theme with the very best founders is speed. And I think that speed gets other investors excited as well. And so, you know, that tends to be a really good sign.
I totally agree with you. I feel like having the just like being really fast speed helps you like basically test out like the stuff a lot more frequently than other people. So like you get a lot more insights from it, as well as like the just like fast pivot will help you, I guess, like get to the direction that you want to go like a lot faster. Um, when you are putting together the program, obviously there's advisors, there's like, you know, some events there, and dinners. Like, what does a program actually look like? So if I'm a founder and I apply to Entrepreneur First today, when do I know like I'm gonna get accepted or not? And
Yeah.
like, if I'm accepted, like what does my program kind of look like for me?
Yeah. So we want to spend a lot of time getting to know people. And so the journey of getting to know somebody is pretty individual. We move fast, but we, from getting to know somebody to getting accepted an investment from us, you know, it can take a week, it can take 2 weeks, it can take longer, depending on the timing and depending what makes sense for the individual. We want to move at the pace that you want to get started. Once you're accepted, the first thing we do is move you to the Bay Area. We have a residency here. We have a house where we house the people that we're working with and the investments we're making. So you move in, you move here to work with us if you're not already here. And then you start working. And, you know, week to week, we will meet on a regular cadence. You'll meet with people in our network. You'll meet with me or the person in the team that you're working with, and we'll help push you further and faster. We also have a bunch of different community activities that you take part in every week. And the idea is that you get to see the pace that other people are moving. You get to see what other people are doing. And you use that to set a bar for yourself and to help push your urgency and help get you further faster and help learn from people who are maybe a little bit further ahead of you in that journey. Once you've arrived on the right thing to work on, and once you've arrived on the right co-founder to work with, and you have the momentum towards something exciting, you start preparing to pitch at our demo day. That involves spending a lot of time preparing your pitch deck, preparing how you're going to frame this to investors, preparing your story, working out how much money you need, and then finally getting up on stage at the end of that process, unveiling what you're doing to the world, and meeting with the hundreds of investors in the EF network to close an exciting round.
Mm. I wonder, so like, I think that sounds like a great process. And I wonder, so like, there is going into Silicon Valley, I think it's probably very different. By the way, Dr. Robert, we'll address your question later, and also Courage. Okay, so I wonder when you guys are like thinking about like positioning Entrepreneur First in the
Mm.
Bay Area ecosystem. So obviously there's like the OG, which is YC, and then there's like I guess like the other top players like Antler or like other players in the city. So like I wonder, how do you think about the positioning of Entrepreneur First?
Mhm.
Is that like a we are backing European founders primarily, or what are some ways to differentiate?
We're a talent investor. It goes back to what I said before. Our first check is into an individual. If I meet teams, if I meet people already on their journey, I will happily send them somewhere else. YC is amazing. I will send them to YC every day. We go so early. I can't emphasize it enough. We're looking for individuals. We're looking for individuals who sometimes don't even necessarily know that they're going to found right now. Our goal is to find those people that are going to go on that journey and work with them. So it's a completely different stage. That's how we talk about it. We're talent investors. We go super early. We enable individuals to realize their potential. we're not here to invest in companies. We invest in companies as a result of investing in individuals. So that's like the key difference. And yeah, I think it always surprises people just how early we're willing to take a bet on somebody.
When I guess like when you take a bet on them, so like I guess like when I'm thinking about like the early stage investors, a lot of like, obviously there's like a lot of pre-seed investors in the city. They would, poach people out of like the director of Apple or whatever, like, hey, you want to start a company, yada, yada, yada. Like, and then what are some ways that you use, like, does everybody have to come inbound only? Or like, do you also outbound to get like the best talent?
No, we really believe going to the places where we think great people are. And we spend a lot of time on college campuses. Me and my team travel across the US, our team globally travel across the world to different campuses to meet individuals and also meet the people that they think are amazing. And so we rely heavily on networks and going out and actually exploring those networks ourselves on the ground to find great people. There are a lot of obvious places that people go to. Like a lot of investors spend a lot of time at Stanford. A lot fewer investors get on a plane and go to like Cornell or go to Yale or go to like, UT Austin, right? That's what we do. And we do that day in, day out. And so, yeah, we have a lot of inbound and we spend a lot of time looking at that. But honestly, what excites us a lot more is going to the places, meeting people on the ground and exploring networks ourselves. That's how all of our best investments have been found.
For when you actually go speak at these like campuses, so are they gonna so I guess like what are some insights that you're taking from the student entrepreneurs?
I think I think the amazing thing about working with young people, working with students is they sort of tell us what to be excited about. I think that when you think about just like what is the next generation of technology to be built, I think like the fascinations of people who are just starting out is a really interesting place to start. And so I think we learn a lot about what to care about from going and meeting people who are really exceptional and who are referred to us and whose peers think are really exciting, and talking to them about what do they think needs to be built. And so I think we take a lot from that, and I think that's really great.
Is there anything that you find like really interesting or shocking from like the last time you visited Yale or like the East Coast school, especially?
I think the thing I always find shocking is how just like how even though ultimately Yale, all of these colleges, they're all in the US. The US is the best place to build a company. The delta between the entrepreneurial ecosystems at like a college on the East Coast versus a college on the West Coast, or even just like a college in the Bay Area versus like not in the Bay Area is so different. Just like the number of people and investors who will go and spend time at Stanford is absolutely astronomical. The number who go and spend time at Yale, Cornell, or even just like go down to LA to go to Caltech is shockingly small. And so, what that means is that I think to a certain extent, like people are kind of starved of role models in those places. And, I've met some really great people who just really need a different ecosystem around them. And so, yeah, I just think the delta of the ecosystem, even within the same country, even within the same kind of like opportunity space is so huge.
So beyond like the VC spending time, is there any AI trends or like, I mean, not just AI trends, but like building trends? So like, for example, what are East Coast people are building versus like the Bay Area? Was everyone's doing AI agent and SaaS?
Yeah, I don't know if like I don't know if I'd say that like what people are building breaks down thematically that easily in that way. I mean, you have some sorting, right? Like, people who are building in fintech tend to aggregate in New York. People are building in like ad tech maybe tend to aggregate a little bit in New York. So you have that, but that tends to happen later, right? That happens once somebody knows what they're building. That happens once somebody sort of like has raised money and is out there. In terms of early stage talent, in terms of the people we're investing in, I'd say that, ideas are diverse and touch on many different things, just like across the country and across the world. And I wouldn't say like there's geographic trends in that way that I spot.
I want to like cover one of the audience questions. So
Sure.
Dr. Robert says, "Is your top priority purely talent? You say that most of your people right out of school, straight to the point. Have you worked with older founders?"
Um, we've worked with all different groups of founders. I think that the group that we are really, really focused on at this point is people fairly early in their career.
Mhm.
Um, it's obviously not the case that like more experienced founders can't be successful, right? But I think that focus is really important for us as an investor. And I think that our product, what we do, what we're good at, all of our best case studies are with people pretty early in their career. So look, never say never. And we've run some experiments recently where we've run experienced founder cohorts and different things. So we're always trying new things. But like 90% of what we do, super young, super early, scrappy founders who are just starting on their journey. Doesn't discount the rest of the market, but at the end of the day, that's our focus, and that's really important. So yeah, and then yeah, our primary consideration is talent. That is what we care most about. That's what we spend all of our time thinking about, and realizing the potential of that talent. When we get to know somebody, the I don't really want to talk much about their ideas, at least not at first. What I really want to understand is how they think. I want to understand what they've done. I want to understand what makes them special. And honestly, the idea is kind of a distraction. It might be a great idea to talk about, or it might be awful, and I might be heavily biased by that, and I don't want to be. And so our primary judgment is, are they great? Great people will reach great outcomes. We can help them get there. So what I care about is, are they potentially great? What makes them tick?
Mm. How does that translate into question that you ask them?
Mm. It's really interesting. I mean, like, we try and have just a real conversation. Like when I sit down with somebody, I'm not there to run through a checklist. I'm there to just deeply get to know them. And so, we'll kick off and we'll always talk about their origin story, who they are, where they came from, like what has got them to where they're at. And then you pick up on all the different things that they've talked about. You pick up on that journey, right? You talk about just like, oh, why are you obsessed with that thing that you just mentioned? Why did you end up studying that thing? Why did you enjoy this job? Why didn't you like this job? And you just have a real deep conversation about the different things in life that they care about, and the choices that they've made, and how they thought about things, and why they've done things, and what excites them. And it's all just like deeply personalized to the person. We're not, we don't run a corporate interview process, right? Like, I think one of the things that's a little bit disarming sometimes when we get to know people is, they're used to interviewing maybe sometimes with big tech or like a bank or a consulting firm. And that's a very different experience from meeting somebody at EF. At EF, we just want to get to know you. We want to get to know the real you. We don't want you to present a version of yourself, and we'll spend ages just trying to find that real person. So it's all about, yeah, it's all a contextual conversation. It just depends on who they are.
For sure. Shout out to hi. Are you so Card is asking like, yeah, was in station F in Paris but closed down. Do you see London as a future?
Mm. So we're still pretty focused on Europe and on London. We run programs in London. We don't currently run programs in Paris and in Station F, but we do have a team in Paris. And what they're doing is they're building an exciting cohort of individuals from across Europe, both France, Germany, all over Switzerland, who we're going to bring to the Bay Area and invest in and building companies here. And so we're heavily focused on Europe still heavily focused on Paris and France. The question is just like, where do we run our programs and where do we aggregate people? Right now, we aggregate people to build companies and to work with them in Bangalore, in London, and in the Bay Area. But yeah, who knows what the future is? I mean, I can see us doing more locations, but I can also see us spreading our talent teams further around the world to find talent in other places as well.
What is I guess like, is there any surprising findings from compared to the European founders to the Bay Area?
I think that in the US, I think the first thing I'd say is like the best talent everywhere is exceptional. And like when you look at true outliers, the true outliers that you find in France or in the UK or in Singapore or wherever are really, really exciting and can compete with the very best people that I meet here. I think the difference though is how that ambition and how that outlier nature is presented, right? And I think like in general, people in the US are just like more naturally comfortable with presenting their ambition, talking about it, being very open with it, and like being very sort of like proud that they want to do something like that.
Mhm.
I think sometimes In other cultures and in other countries, that's not as normal, right? Like maybe there are less entrepreneurs there, maybe just like there are different family pressures there, right? Like it varies for different reasons, but I think what varies is how people present on the surface. The very best people inside, when you get to know them, are very similar. They think similarly, or they think similarly in that they think really differently. But yeah, I think what changes is how they present, and that gives us a huge opportunity, right? Like I think if you take the best talent from Europe, from Asia, from anywhere, and you put them on a stage where they can be ambitious and where they can talk about what they want to create and how they want to change the world, and they can realize that potential, then that's really exciting. And so that's what we do.
Mm. For since you previously mentioned about like you guys are trying to bring some European founders, trying to help them to establish a presence in the US. What does that look like? So, for example, if I'm like a top Europe founder, how do you bring me to the US?
Yeah. So we run part of our program in London or in Bangalore, and once we've invested in you, once you've built a company, the first thing you do is you get on a plane and you come out here and you start working with us in the US. And all of our companies now pitch at our demo day in San Francisco. They unveil themselves to the world, regardless of where they're from or where they started here. And so, it's a vital part of our program that systematically, as part of that, they're going to come out here. They're going to spend at least 3 months getting familiar with the ecosystem, building a network here, working with customers here, and then after that, raising money from investors here, and then permanently relocating here after that.
When I guess like when the founders that I guess like how many founder would end up actually moving their whole um thing to the US, and then how many would like stay in Europe?
Basically everyone. I mean, like, we really select people who want to do that. We want people who want to build global companies, who are willing to do the thing that makes that most likely to happen. And honestly, I think the thing that makes it most likely to happen is basing yourself in the Bay Area, at least for a significant amount of time. So, like basically everyone. Our primary source of capital into our companies at the earliest stages now is US investors. Like most of the revenue for most of our companies comes from the US. Now, look, there's always edge cases. There's always people whose business makes more sense in a different geography, and there's different pathways there, right? Like it's not one size fits all. But 90% of the time, if you're building a company and if you're in one of these ecosystems, my advice is get on a plane.
The initial check is 250K. And
Yeah.
then do you guys do any follow-ons, or how does the fund has been running globally? Is it like if I live in Europe, I got 250K, Bangalore, 250K? I feel like that's kind of like maybe different in each geo regions what 250K meant in that region. So like, is that the same check for everybody everywhere, or?
It's the same check for everybody because ultimately we bring everyone here, and so actually they're spending it in the same place, So cost doesn't vary. You start somewhere different, you end up in the same place. So first check is 250K. We then subsequently invest later stage at like Series A, B, C. But the first check is 250K. We help you raise more. Companies that go through our demo day tend to raise between $2 to $5 million, depending on where they're at, the type of company they're building post demo day, and they raise that from other investors in the market. We support them through that process, and then late stage Series A, B, etc. We potentially look to invest more, but that's on a case by case basis.
I wonder. So when you are thinking about like I guess like you're evaluating on different sectors. What are some lens that you're using? Like, so obviously, I guess talent's critical. And how do you vet the, I guess like the depth of the knowledge when you're not the subject expert? Let's say so and so is building something healthcare or like cancer research, and like how do you kind of evaluate the depth of their own like domain knowledge?
I guess what I say is I'm not. At least when I first invest in them, I'm not evaluating that. I'm evaluating their ability to rapidly build it, right? We invest in people who are so early in their journey that they're rarely going to be subject matter experts, right? They're rarely going to be domain experts. The real question I'm going to have is like, feasibly, could they be? Are they going to move fast enough and aggressive enough to learn and get better at that? And I think that whenever you end up assessing someone's knowledge so early in their career and journey, you're probably making the wrong assessment. Again, it just comes down to the person. We really care about the person. Now, does that mean that that person should work in healthcare or work in this particular space?
Mhm.
Maybe not, right? Like there are areas that even people super early in their career are more suited to than others, right? If I work with a founder and I've invested into them and they're great and they've done all these internships for the last few years in health tech startups and now they want to build a company, it'd be kind of crazy not to use that health tech knowledge and some of the stuff that they thought about, right? So you can kind of use that to find a direction. And I'd want to hear from them insightful things about healthcare and things they picked up and learned from doing those internships. But I'm not looking to do like full market DD or anything like that at the early stage, right? I'm looking to see that week on week, you are going to learn more and more and more, and that is going to be able to let you feasibly become somebody who knows the most about this area in the future.
I One of the challenge from like investing in the early stage, like the student founders, is like a lot of them don't have enough work experience to actually sell to enterprise. So how do you make sure that like the people that you have invested in are able to eventually sell to enterprise? I think that's like a very specific question, but that's kind of like how you
Yeah,
become.
it's a great question. It's a learning curve, right? Like we have a bunch of founders who have sold to enterprise in our network. We have some sales advisors that we work with and that help founders on this journey. And so, we can coach people to get better at that. I'd also say that, in my experience, at least recently, it's never been easier to sell to enterprise. Definitely when it comes to AI automation, like trying to try new products. I think it is like surprisingly fast to and surprisingly easier to get into true enterprise, at least trials right now than it ever has been. And so in some ways, like the bar is lower to be able to get in and try stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, that stuff has to convert, it has to turn into full paid trials. But I really do believe that like if you are an exceptional person, if you're building towards a genuine problem that actually matters for an organization, the biggest barrier is not going to be your early enterprise sales. Now, scaling that, how do you set up a sales org? How do you do a bunch of other stuff later on? That's hard, but that can be coached, that can be taught, that can be brought on by people in our network. But the early days, I think really the key thing that matters is, are you solving a big problem? Does it move the needle on the customer's economics? And if it does, like right now is a great time to going out and building stuff.
How frequently do you feel like I guess like from my experience of like being a um angel investor or like previously working in venture, I feel like most of the ideas like kind of like trench like 700 times like since like the inception of this company.
Yeah,
Um
totally.
how I guess like how do you um I guess like stay on top of everything, and then like how frequently, so like when you're seeing the biggest success so far for EF, like are people building something that they originally wanted to build mostly, or like do you feel like it's more towards like
Yeah.
everybody shift to something else? What's a whole vibe?
Yeah, everything changes, which is why we care so much about people, right? People grow, hopefully. Ideas change a lot, but you're stuck with the people to a certain extent. And so, we that's why we care so much about the people. I would say that absolutely nobody that we invest in who goes on to be successful is ever doing the exact same thing as when we first met them, right? And those pivots can be massive. They can be like going from I was working on healthcare to I'm now working on consumer entertainment. Or they can be subtle within the same area, but realizing what they should actually be doing. But yes, ideas constantly evolve. In fact, I'd say, until founders have had that moment where whatever they're building has changed rapidly or changed massively, I'm almost a bit suspicious that they found the right thing. It almost seems to be that this has to be the case, that things are going to change massively, or maybe they haven't quite worked out what they should be building yet.
Mhm. When I guess like um since you're like in SF, every day now. So like maybe we could talk about like a day in your life kind of look like how by like, you know, from running the program to uh attracting talent to like evaluating talent, like what does your day kind of look like?
I spend a lot of time talking to people. So you know, there's a few different buckets, right? Like I spend time working with the founders that we've invested in. And in that case, I'm spending time helping them problem solve, helping them think about what they should be doing, helping them work out, you know, what does the next week look like? What is the most ambitious version of getting stuff done this week? Um, then I also spend a lot of time meeting potential new investments, right? Getting to know people, getting to know, you know, do we think they're exceptional? Getting to assess them and work out, should we be working with them? Should we be investing in them? And then the third part is, you know, EF's a global organization. We have, you know, almost 100 people all around the world. And so I spend a lot of time working with our other locations, working with the leadership team here, working out just like, what can we do globally to make EF just like even more exciting? So it's those three things, breaks down to a lot of different meetings, a lot of different time zones. But honestly, the reason I get up every day and the reason that I am excited to do this is I can't think of another job that lets me spend as much time meeting so many different interesting people with all different backgrounds, experiences, like views of the world, and like helping them realize their potential. It's really rewarding, and that's where I get my energy from.
Mhm. I wonder, so like for the founders that you guys met, I wonder, on the other hand, like there is, you know, you guys invest in them like when they are just like, you know, maybe one person. And I know that I asked like a similar question earlier, but like I feel like there is, you know, also South Park comment, which is like also like invest in talent
Yeah.
or like I guess like a very early in general. And same as like a Sensei speed run. I mean, obviously, I feel like you guys built such a great reputation in Europe, and then coming to here, I'm sure a lot of Europe founder will like 100% maybe select you guys a lot earlier, and then maybe globally as well. But what's your thought process on like the ecosystem here? Because I feel like it's a lot more established to like um, be here in general, and then like to I guess like fight for the talent that you really want. Like, you know, how do you guys kind of like quote unquote win the deal when you know when it was like a tie or like people are applying for speedrun while like that's part
Yeah.
coming yada yada yada. So
Yeah. The first thing I say is again, stage, right? Like, you know, we of course, like sometimes we're competing for something. But you know, the vast majority of the time, we tend not to be competing with other investors. We tend to be competing with the status quo, with family pressure to stay in college, with a really interesting job offer, and maybe the seductive idea that maybe I'll found later. We tend to primarily compete with the status quo. And I think that's just like one of the surprising and counterintuitive things about what we do. I think that there is a view that like, oh my goodness, everyone who should be founding, everyone who could be great is already founding. It's just not true. And, you know, I think that to be honest with you, the Bay Area is a bit of a bubble. You know, maybe that's true of Stanford. Like it's there's a bajillion really great founders coming out of Stanford. But it's not necessarily true of everywhere else. And as I said, we get on planes, we go to the places we think great people are at, and we help people realize that, like, no, you can do this now. You are exceptional. You do compete with those people, and we can give you the platform to be able to do that. And so, you know, I'd say I spend most of my time trying to work out how do we compete with the status quo rather than with other investors. There are some amazing investors out here. There are all different people that people can work with. The real competition is us going out and finding great people and helping them realize that the only option is not just waiting.
mm. um I love that. What are so like, but like, I feel like sometimes like when you're building at a, let's say like you are the founding engineer of Cursor, and then you come out start a new company, maybe you will get a lot more
Yeah.
insight versus
Yes.
if I just start right now and I
Yeah.
may not even know what to
Yeah.
start.
Yeah.
What's your kind of like thinking framework on like people want to gain some sort of experience?
Yeah, look, I mean, you can start a company at many different points in your life, right? Like clearly there have been people who have been successful starting companies many years into their career, a few years into their career, sometimes straight out of high school, sometimes out of college, whatever, right? Um, but I think the common theme, and I think the thing that the thing that I often spend my time discussing with people is, just because somebody has started a company 10 years into their career doesn't mean you have to start a company 10 years into your career. You can just do it now. And it doesn't mean everyone should do it now. It doesn't mean that everyone should drop out of college. It doesn't mean that everyone should like not go to college or not start a job. That is the right pathway for some people. But if you are hungry, ambitious, relentless, if you have that thing in your head that just makes you not want to go and serve that time, you do not have to go and serve that time. You can just be successful. And so I think that, you know, maybe gaining experience is the right pathway for some people. And maybe they realize they want to do it later on. But if you want to do it now, you can do it now. And the thing is, you can always go back and get a job. If you're exceptional, if you're great, if you're the kind of person that EF is talking to and wants to work with, chances are that you can get a job in the future. This is not an irreversible pathway. If you try and build something, and even if it doesn't have the success you want it to, you'll probably be a more invaluable asset to the world, and probably have more job potential than you could ever have had now.
I totally agree. I feel like it's not irreversible. It is
Yeah.
you're like more attractive afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Are there any particular sector that you find very interesting right now, especially the one that are like overlooked by like other VCs?
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, there is so much that's interesting right now. Maybe an answer a while back, but I think no longer. I think it's now become kind of trendy as robotics. I think there's so much to be built in robotics. I think
Mhm.
that the impact of AI in robotics and different control systems is really exciting. I think a kind of unappreciated area right now, and I'd say like an area that loads of investors are super bearish about, is probably biotech. And I think it's probably the hardest time in the world to raise money for biotech companies. But I think there are some really interesting companies to be built at the intersection of AI and bio. I find it really interesting talking to founders about the opportunities here. And I imagine we're going to see a lot more of that in the future, and kind of an uptick and just like interest in that as an area. Yeah, those are the ones that jump to mind.
I love that. I guess like what excites you the most about the current founders in the current EF cohort?
Yeah, I think what excites me most is, I think that EF's been operating for a long time. We are for a decade now, and EF is an investor, but we're also an operating company and a startup ourselves. And I think what's really exciting is that we have, over the last decade or more, really compounded our learnings about who we should work with, who we should invest in, and how do we realize their potential. I was on a really early EF batch, and I met some exceptional people. But I'd say that like our bar and the type of people we're working with has got even higher. And I think genuinely, like the sets of companies that we're producing at the moment, and the people that we're working with at the moment are genuinely some of the best people we ever have. And I think what's exciting is that not only is the talent quality better than ever, like the time to build a company is better than ever. I sort of touched on this before, but it is easier than ever if you are solving a genuine problem, and if you're hunting down genuine value creation in companies. It is easier than ever to get your foot in the door and actually sell to customers and get real people using your product, real organizations paying to use your product. And so, that kind of combination of traction is really moving fast. People really want they really want the AI wave to hit their companies. They really want to pay for it. Plus, we're working with the best people ever. It's super exciting to me. So, yeah, investors, come to demo days, come and meet them.
Love that. I wonder, when you're program building for attracting people from Yale or like all these like other schools that are maybe overlooked by VCs, who do you ask for? So like I'm always curious, since like I feel like you have come from Europe to the Bay Area,
Yeah.
like even from like buying an office to like where do you locate, and to like who would be your campus ambassador to get like other entrepreneurs to like sign up for maybe an information day for EF.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the kind of like actual practices that you guys are using to attract the best talent? And also on the campus, I feel like the problem is like, sure, there's like entrepreneur clubs, but like sometimes the best talent are probably
Yeah,
not the entrepreneur club people because everyone's
yeah,
trying to get a job in VC afterwards. So
yeah,
what
yeah, yeah, for sure.
what's the best way to attract
Yeah,
the best like talent, and then what kind of content do you have to put out to like be like, hey, come like listen to a
yeah.
talk with like Reid Hoffman, right? Like, so how does that kind of work in each campus?
Yeah, honestly, the vast majority of our work is done through building deep networks. Like, yeah, you're right. Like, we could go and do a talk at the Entrepreneur Society. Sometimes we do. That's probably not where most of the people come from, right? And you're totally right. You know, it's not obvious that the best people kind of are going to go to some weekly Entrepreneur Society meetup. So what we try and do is we try and get to know people on campus that we think know great people. And we have an investment fellowship program where we essentially have different people who represent us at different campuses around the country. And these form like the entry points, the nodes towards getting to know people who we think are amazing. And so, you know, we'll go to campus and we'll ask the people that we already really like, who do you think's amazing? Like who is the person that you think we should spend time with? And then we meet those people, and then we ask those people, who should we be spending time with? And so it's developing these deep relationships. It's going there and actually spending time with people. It's going there and meeting the people that everyone is talking about that actually helps us unearth really exciting people to invest in. It tends not to be us going and doing sort of talks or us going and sort of like representing ourselves at sort of like some big event. It tends to be the work of going there, building deep networks. Doesn't mean we don't do that. Like, we've run some huge scale like hackathons and other things like that in the past, and we've met really great people from doing them. And those could be like amazing magnets for really interesting talent. But you know, 80% of our work is probably going, getting to know people, getting to know the people they think we should know, and finding those people who, you're right, might not be just like obviously gathering in the obvious places.
How do you find the first person? I also want to be mindful of the time. Maybe we do like 1 to 2 real question and then we wrap
Sure,
it.
sure.
But
How do we find that first person? You know, it's similar work, right? Like, you know, we've invested in a lot of different students throughout the world. We get referrals, we get introductions. You know, I just can't emphasize enough how many people our team will meet every year to get to know people, to get to know who we think we can help, to get to know the people that will refer us to other people. You know, maybe some of those people have applied to EF at some point. Maybe the timing won't be right, but maybe they know people who we should be talking to. And so everything is referral based. Everything is deeply just like based on us getting to know them. If you think you're somebody at a campus and watching this and you think you know great people, like, let us know. You know, we'd love to
I almost
support you.
I almost guarantee people will apply the job of
Yeah.
an investment fellowship afterwards.
There we go. There we go. Well, we'd love to chat. As in, like, you know, we're building that out. Nadia on my team, who's championing it, is doing a really good job of building just like a program. You know, I think there's lots of talent scouting programs that different funds run at different campuses. I think what we've developed and what we have and what we're launching at the moment is a version of this where I genuinely think it's not just a one-way street. You know, we are really investing in the people that are going to represent us on these campuses. We're giving them resources to run events. We're giving them budgets to go out and meet people and spend time with them, have coffee with them. And we're helping them understand what we do and become future talent investors tomorrow. So yeah, if you're interested in that, please look up our investment fellowship.
I want to maybe do maybe one more question and then 30-second fire round. One more question is like, how do you improve yourself? Like, whether it's like learning about AI and then also like tracking all the founders. Like, do you have a system that you build up for yourself that, like, for example, every day like ChatGPT summarize what you're reading notes or something, or like what are some system that you built for process this amount of information?
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly chatting to ChatGPT. I don't know how much of it is hallucinated, but that's my primary way of learning these days. So I think, you know, I'm never going to be as much of an expert in these topics as our founders. But you know what I really love to do, and I think what founders appreciate as well, is when I also have genuine curiosity in the things they're working on. And so one of the great things about what I do is I kind of get to learn from them. I remember one of the first founders I worked with was working in quantum computing, and you know, he'd done a PhD at one of the best universities in Asia. and this was an area I didn't really know at all, right?
Mhm.
And through meeting weekly to help advance his company, I kind of got a primer in quantum, right? And so the way I learn is, yeah, I go away and do a bunch of background reading. I go away and like talk to ChatGPT about these topics, but I also just spend time with our founders because they're the ones who know these areas, and I get to learn by helping them. So that's my primary resource.
I love that. Well, Joe, okay, so let's do a fire round.
Go
Uh,
for it.
what's your favorite book?
Favorite book, How to Be a Founder by Alice Benting, founder of EF, obviously.
Love that. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Oh gosh, I would Peter Thiel.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Oh, Matt Clifford, the other co-founder of EF.
Where can we find you outside work?
You can find me at the airport traveling a lot. I love my air miles. I'm constantly on a plane, and I love going to the places where our founders are. So always at the airport.
I have one last question actually. When you're saying about traveling, it's like
Yeah.
you were in Singapore to build out the Asia program, and then like, can we talk about like how do you quickly settle into like both process as like a person who like just immigrated to a different city or country, and then like quickly build out the ecosystem like network there?
Yeah. I think I think it's interesting. I think that you know, I think the key thing is a bit like exploring campuses, right? It's finding your starting points. And I'm lucky that like what EF does and our mission and what we're trying to achieve tends to just like attract a lot of people who want to help, right? And especially in the Bay Area, like people are super helpful, super open with their networks. And so, when I first got here, I met with a bunch of founders that EF's invested in Europe who have moved here. I met with a bunch of people who have invested in EF and are really invested in our success. And so, I think again, it's just like trawling through those networks, getting connections through that, getting to know people who are interesting through that. Definitely 100% I avoid all networking events. But what I care a lot about is like people who know me or people who know EF and care about what they do. Who do they think are the most valuable people I should speak to? And from there, you quickly get to meet a lot of interesting people.
I love that. Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such a fun conversation, and it's so good to like learn more about like EF as well as like yourself and the whole program of like finding the world's best talent.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun. Time has flown by.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let
Come
me.
visit the office soon.
Yes.